Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Amonkhet. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with R&D insider Ian Duke, and we're ready for our first semifinal match. Yuuya Watanabe from Japan. He plays for Team Musashi. He's on Teamer Aetherworks Marvel. Hall of Famer. All ready to roll against Martin Müller from Denmark. He is also on Teamer Aetherworks Marvel, though their builds do differ. We'll get into the details of that as we go. He plays for Team Genesis. And the winner of this best of five will find themselves in the finals of the Pro Tour.
Now, Martin starting off on a mulligan to 6 here on the play, so he'll be down a card as we go. Taking a look at players' opening hands here in just a moment, we see Martin Müller opening on a Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot. I want to highlight here Yuuya's opening hand here. He started out with 2 forests and a Shrine of the Forsaken Gods.
Okay.
So, importantly, blue mana is really, really necessary for his game plan here. He wants to hit that Glimmer of Genius on turn 4, especially in this matchup. He'd love to have access to blue mana to leave up Censor or else to cycle it and make sure he keeps hitting his land drops. So we're really going to see what happens in these next couple turns for Yuuya as far as his mana is concerned. Meanwhile, mana developing quite nicely for Martin Müller with a Attune with Ether, finding all of his colors with relative ease. And looking at what's in store in the next couple turns for Martin Müller, he's got a hand with Chandra Flamecaller. He's got an Ulamog that's going to be stranded for quite some time, and a Harness Lightning, not particularly effective in this matchup. So not a lot going on for either player here in the early game. I actually, if Yuuya can hit that Glimmer of Genius on turn 4, I'm going to be liking where he stands.
Definitely, with 2 of the big payoff cards from Aetherworks Marvel right now in Martin Müller's hand. Oh, he found an Aetherworks Marvel off the top of the library there and cast it. He's already got 6 energy as well, Ian, so that was a big swing in his direction here.
Yeah, very likely Martin Müller taking advantage of the fact that he sees no blue mana on the side of Yuuya Watanabe. Now, one thing to be cautious about in this matchup is that Yuuya's actually playing 3 copies of Dissenter's Deliverance in his main deck. Now, this is the 1 and a green, destroy target artifact, cycles for a green. And the reason that's so relevant is if Martin Müller leaves an Aetherworks Marvel and play with that much energy, Yuuya can take it out. However,
is he going to hit an Ulamog? Because that certainly just ends the game here if he does, right?
Yeah, taking out 2 lands would just absolutely crush the game here from this point. Looks like no Ulamog there. I saw a Whirler Virtuoso, a couple kind of middling options there. And that is going to be the last of Martin Müller's energy for now, so he's probably going to want to pick up, I would say, the Whirler Virtuoso. That's going to give him 3 energy. He's also got the Puzzle Knot there, so he'll be able to untap and get back up to 6 energy again to try another spin.
Boy, that one looked pretty bad for Martin, and then it just went from that to, okay, well, I could just win the game here, and now we've got a real game to go. The question I have is, has Yuuya found blue mana yet? Because even though Martin did mulligan and has a clunky hand, finding that Aetherworks Marvel was only piece of the puzzle. Yuuya Watanabe with no blue mana for Censor.
It looks like Yuuya did pick up an Ether Hub that turn, so he's going to be able to play that, and he can spend that 1 energy to cast Glimmer of Genius if he wants to. I think Yuuya just very carefully thinking through his turn, thinking through his sequencing. Now, he's got to be super careful. If he were to, say, tap out for Glimmer of Genius on his main phase, he's just leaving the door wide open for Martin Müller to do whatever he wants with that Aetherworks Marvel.
I mean, he's got his own Marvel.
And he does have 6 energy.
Yeah. How about we spin the wheel?
I'm game.
We'll see what Yuuya thinks about it. Yeah, he's going to play it. And here we go. So we just get the full Marvel treatment here in the mirror. Both players playing it on turn 4 and activating it that turn. What does Yuuya Watanabe find?
Again, Ulamog being the big hit here.
All right. Well, the fact that he set those, I didn't get to see, but the fact that he set those back down signifies to me that it is unlikely he has hit an Ulamog.
Or it's just savage BM here.
Let's see what he's going to find.
So what else might Yuuya be interested in here? He does have a Torrential Gearhulk as a hit in his deck, but I don't think he has anything particularly great to flash back with that just right now. A Rogue Refiner is always a solid middling option there just to draw some extra cards, get some energy. But, Yuuya's also thinking forward to what Martin's going to do on his turn, which is potentially, again, activate his own Aetherworks Marvel. So Glimmer of Genius is what is found off of that activation. So, a nice one.
Kind of funny, all told, he ended up just getting the Glimmer of Genius that we thought he may cast anyway.
Right.
So he's going to be prioritizing ways to get that energy count right back up again.
So in a situation like this, Yuuya knows Martin's going to have access to an Aetherworks Marvel activation on his next turn. So he kind of just has to assume Martin's not going to hit an Ulamog. Ulamog is basically going to be game here regardless. So that just kind of closes off that path of the probability tree. And so Yuuya is just assuming that, things are going to work out well, that Martin ends up missing Ulamog.
Not much else he can do but sit there and hope as Martin Müller sacrifices his Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot, giving him enough energy to spin the Aetherworks Marvel again. Is he going to hit an Ulamog this time?
There's a Marvel.
No, he did hit Chandra at the end, though.
That's a good one. This one of the main innovations of Team Genesis's version of Teamer Aetherworks. It's done awesome work against the zombie decks all weekend. And, Marshall, in this matchup, it's that 0 ability that's really key.
Especially with 2 copies of Ulamog in hand for Martin. He's just going to want to get rid of these. Look at that. And Yuuya just kind of chuckles because look at the hand that Martin Müller is now getting. Oh, there's his other Ulamog. He seems adept at drawing those.
Both players with exactly 3 copies of Ulamog in their decks. So Martin with only 1 more copy to find. That's actually very relevant here, Marshall.
It certainly is. Had he hit it earlier, the game probably would have just been over. But as it stands, look how many cards Yuuya has in his hand.
Yeah, now, as things stand right now, Martin has the advantage in that he has Chandra Flamecaller on the battlefield. He has the advantage on the battlefield, is what I meant to say. But Yuuya, actually, his long-term prospects are looking better to me here. His Marvel is also active. He's got a bunch of cards in hand. He's going to be able to keep hitting his land drops. And Yuuya has more Ulamogs left in his library, so his Marvel is worth more than Martin's Marvel right now. Yuuya with 5 energy so far.
Right, he just needs 1 more to be able to activate that Aetherworks Marvel.
And we did see that Glimmer of Genius in his hand earlier, so that's an option there, as is Whirler Virtuoso is what he goes with. Goes up to 8.
And once again, here we go. Aetherworks Marvel. No Ulamogs hit as of yet. Does Yuuya hit one here? No, I did see a Torrential Gearhulk, though.
Yeah, we may see Torrential Gearhulk now flashing back Glimmer of Genius from the graveyard.
It was a big sigh from Watanabe. Neither player able to hit the namesake Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger from their Aetherworks Marvels.
It's funny, Marshall, from where we stand right now, this is still anyone's game. Could go either direction, but there have been multiple opportunities on both players' sides to just end the game on the spot had one of them hit an Ulamog earlier on.
The funny part about the way this has played out as well is that both of them have really had no interaction in the early stages, so they've just had to kind of hold their breath and hope.
Yeah, which is actually kind of surprising given, Yuuya's deck is, as I was saying earlier, fairly well set up to interact in the mirror match. He's got Censor, he's got Negate, he's got Druid's Deliverance. Hasn't really seen those cards yet or hasn't had an opportunity to maneuver into them.
Okay, so Glimmer of Genius is going to get cast from the graveyard thanks to Torrential Gearhulk.
Seems to me that Yuuya has to dodge just 1 more turn of Martin's Aetherworks Marvel not hitting an Ulamog, and then maybe he can get some counterplay with either finding an Ulamog himself or drawing into a Druid's Deliverance and taking out the tapped Marvel. This is kind of, for me, the crux of the game right here. This is the key turn.
Okay. Martin currently without enough energy.
Although, of course, he can
no.
use that 0 ability on Chandra Flamecaller. Wow, is that the 3rd copy of Ulamog sitting in his hand there?
Yeah.
That is a big problem for Martin Müller. So not only can he not cast that anytime soon, but it also means he's kind of stuck as far as activating the 0 ability of Chandra Flamecaller. If he does that, if he wants to exchange his hand, draw some new cards, get some fresh gas, it means he's going to have to discard that 3rd copy and just totally close off the possibility of ever hitting Ulamog this game. That's going to be a tough decision for him. I mean, the other option is just to kind of hold on and hope to eventually hit 10 lands and be able to cast it, but that also seems very far-fetched here. So we may see Martin Müller just kind of abandoning the Ulamog plan altogether and just trying to win a grindier game, leveraging Chandra Flamecaller and maybe trying to just get some Whirler Virtuoso or Rogue Refiner action going here. But no, he does go with a +1 on the Chandra, and I think that's in large part due to the fact that 3rd Ulamog is already in his hand.
Yeah, he just has to try to take the aggressive role here. And it's a tough one for him to take, though we have seen him switch gears before. He's going to attack with both of the 3-1s. They do connect, but Yuuya is at 24, so he has plenty of wiggle room as far as life total goes to take hits from Chandra. And yeah, it's just a tough position here for Martin, who is trying to change gears and become the aggressive deck. Hard for his list to do, though.
And so it's funny, not much happened there on Martin's turn, but even just us getting the information about that 3rd Ulamog being in his hand, I've now moved the advantage bar squarely into Yuuya's favor, both from that and also the fact that Yuuya was, yet again, able to dodge any disaster that turn and able to untap fresh. 7 cards in hand does Yuuya have, including Dissenter's Deliverance. He can take out that Marvel there. He can, cast Glimmer of Genius, get up to 6 energy, go for another spin of his own Marvel. He's seen a lot of cards from his library so far and hasn't seen an Ulamog yet, so it's becoming increasingly likely that each spin will hit an Ulamog. And at this point, if Ulamog comes out, takes down Chandra, takes out the opposing Aetherworks Marvel on Martin's side of the table, that's going to be GG right there, I think.
He looks like Yuuya's going to set up for a Glimmer of Genius. That's going to put him up to the requisite 6 energy.
And remember, if he sees an Ulamog in this scry, he can actually just put it right back on top and then activate Aetherworks Marvel.
He still has
to I'm sorry. Yeah, he's still going to draw 2 afterwards, right? What am I saying? That makes no sense.
Let's see what he does. He's going to put both of these on the bottom. Draw 2 fresh cards off the top of his library. Though that is not really the problem here for Yuuya. It is finding a way to finish off Martin. And here we go. There he is. Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. Finally, one of these players is able to hit one off of their Aetherworks Marvel. And this is a huge development in Game 1 as Yuuya Watanabe is firmly in the lead now, and the prospects of coming back for Martin Müller are dire, given that, again, the best way to fight an Ulamog is with your own. He doesn't have access to any more, at least not off of that Aetherworks Marvel.
That's right. He's hopelessly far away from getting actually to 10 mana to cast the 3rd one that is in his hand here. Marshall, I'm just reviewing Martin's deck list to see if there's anything that we're missing here that might be able to turn this around. I'm not seeing too much here. I mean, the only really possibility is just generating a bunch of energy, getting Whirler Virtuoso going, trying to set up a race, but the math on that just does not work out. And I think we're going to see Martin Müller packing this in pretty soon.
Yeah, he's going to fight the fight. There's no time limit on the match here, and he absolutely should play this out to its natural conclusion. Once he knows that he cannot win the game, of course he'll concede.
Now, both players do know each other's deck list. They do know each other's sideboard going into this match. So there's not a ton of value in hiding information. You could make the case that if this were in the Swiss, Martin would not concede, would not want to reveal the fact, for example, that he only has 3 Ulamogs in his entire deck. But here in the top 8, I think it's mostly just about kind of playing things out. Again, there's no time limit. There's no disadvantage to just taking every chance that you have. I've certainly won games of Magic where I thought there was no chance that I could win, but ended up playing it out and finding a slim chance and having that pan out. But Down comes Chandra Flamecaller.
Yeah,
You know,
she doesn't look great here, does she?
She doesn't look great. I mean, she can get in for some damage with that +1 ability. And, you know, if there's ever a hope for Martin in this game, it's probably just involves setting up a race. So in that sense, this is one of the better cards that you can have this turn.
So we're going to see Martin attack with everything. This really is the only route to victory that he has, as Yuuya can simply block one creature. No, he's got another play. He's going to use to Harness Lightning to save himself some damage here by taking out one of the elementals. Still takes a decent amount of damage, dropping down to 12, but the board looks pretty stable thanks to Torrential Gearhulk and Ulamog. On Yuuya's side, he can probably just start smashing here as well.
Yeah, I actually don't mind taking out the Chandra.
Attack Chandra, and don't forget the trigger, he says.
Yeah, this is pretty smart here. In this case, dealing 20 damage to Martin, or 21 damage to Martin, and decking him happen at roughly the same speed. So Yuuya can kind of take this middle approach where he plays defensively. He's going to leave that Gearhulk back because he's not going for a damage win here. He's going to send Ulamog at Chandra. Of course, he still gets that attack trigger and gets to take out Chandra, which is a large part of Martin's offense. And this will set up for, you know, basically a 2-round lethal attack, while also protecting Yuuya's life total, which is really the only way he can lose from here.
Yeah, it really does seem like the logical way to go here. That also, of course, includes leaving the Torrential Gearhulk back to block because, hey, if you're not going to kill him with damage anyway, you may as well leave yourself a blocker and bolster your life total a little bit.
We can also see in Yuuya's hand there is a copy of Kozilek's Return, his one main deck copy there.
And this is Martin Müller picking up his permanence because game one is over. It has gone to Yuuya Watanabe from Japan. Team Musashi is going to win a game one where Martin, with just a little bit of a different hit there on those early Marvel spins, could have stolen the game back. But it didn't pan out that way. It took a while before we saw Ulamog, and game one goes to Yuuya Watanabe. We're going to have much more semifinal action for you after these messages.
Play Standard each weekend to win special Standard Showdown prize boosters. Amonkhet Standard Showdown events run through July 2nd, now available on Saturday and Sundays. Find a location to play at magic.wizards.com/Standard Showdown.
Always know the right play to make? Show off your skills at a local preliminary Pro Tour qualifier. With over 500 game stores worldwide running PPTQs, find an event near you at magic.wizards.com/PPTQ.
And welcome back to the feature match area here in Nashville. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Ian Duke. We're in semifinal match number 1 here on Pro Tour Sunday. We are moving right along in the top 8. We've got Yuuya Watanabe versus Martin Müller. Yuuya having just taken down game number 1. In just a while, we'll have our second semifinal match between Ken Yukihiro and Jerry Thompson. But for now, it's a best of 5 between these two gentlemen here. Will it be Martin Müller or will it be Yuuya Watanabe who advances?
So a reminder for folks at home, this is again a pre-sideboarded game, so everything we said about the nature of the matchup from last game still applies here. This is a best out of 5 series. First 2 are pre-sideboard, the next 3 are post.
Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot here for Yuuya Watanabe. He's going to bump him up to 23 life and 3 energy. A good start for him, and a reasonable start here for Martin as well, who's up to 3 energy thanks to an Ether Hub and now a Rogue Refiner. Both players setting up. Okay. 5 energy now for Yuuya Watanabe. He gets his own card off of his copy of Rogue Refiner before passing the turn back to Martin. Martin did take a mulligan this game. Does not seem to have slowed him down particularly.
Let's take a look at Martin's hands and his options.
Ooh, look at this.
That's a pretty cool trick.
The good old-fashioned way, a little Ether Meltdown on the Rogue Refiner there after it blocked, so it's going to go away, but Martin gets to keep his attacker.
Martin's hand looking a little light there. He's got a copy of Harness Lightning, but other than that, just some lands.
You know what he'd like to see?
Aetherworks Marvel?
Yeah, he's up to 7 energy too, Ian. So if he does manage to find one, like he did in the first game, he could play it and activate it in the same turn. The interesting dynamic, though, is that, of course, we know he doesn't actually have one in his hand yet and isn't particularly likely to draw one. Yuuya doesn't. Yuuya has to respect that fact, too, and he's going to pass the turn back here.
So let's see what Yuuya is working with here. Looks like he's passing back with quite a few options. He's got Glimmer of Genius available here end of turn if Martin doesn't put on any pressure. Yeah, to me, that's the key card in this matchup in general.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to think of it as they're both playing variants of the same archetype, but Martin is the mid-range version, and Yuuya is the control version in some ways. And as is typically the case, I think the controlling version is going to be favored here, at least as the decks are configured for pre-sideboard. We'll talk more about post-sideboard later on.
Okay.
And Martin, largely at the mercy of his top decks here, given that he took that mulligan and is kind of flooded out a little bit, kind of seemed a little bit frustrated there, just playing a land and passing back, I think.
Yeah, we're going to see Glimmer of Genius here from Yuuya Watanabe on end step. He didn't find anything to destroy with his Dissenter's Deliverance, and this is certainly a much better use of his mana than cycling. Also of note, that Dissenter's Deliverance main deck, really nice.
It's a big deal.
It really is, because, I got to say, Ian, after having watched these decks for multiple rounds here over the course of the weekend, that, yeah, sometimes they hit an Ulamog off the first spin and the game kind of ends. But a lot of times they have to spin it over and over and over, and oh boy, these decks can do that. Dissenter's Deliverance limiting you to just one activation at the most. It's actually quite strong and could be a big factor in this game.
It's also a pretty low opportunity cost in that, if Yuuya doesn't need it, he can just go ahead and cycle it. If Martin is not presenting a Marvel himself and Yuuya needs to look for one, that's a perfectly serviceable option also. So here we are in Yuuya's main phase. Looking over his options here, Rogue Refiner would be a fine addition to the battlefield.
Yep, he's going to go for that. So he's up to 9 energy, which matches Martin Müller's energy count.
And we can see Yuuya's all set up to play his 6th land and have access to Torrential Gearhulk with Glimmer of Genius in the graveyard next turn. And that's going to be a nice combination of keeping up his card advantage over Martin Müller and also adding some pressure to the board. I mean, Torrential Gearhulk does kill pretty fast. It's got 5 power.
Harness Lightning going to be used to just kill the opposing Rogue Refiner so that Martin's can chip in there. But this draw, not what Martin had drawn up. Yeah, he's pecking away for 3 damage, but that is unlikely to be the way that he wins a game. And a Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot gives him more energy, but he already had plenty of that. He really needs some of the payoffs now. Yuuya's going to play an Ether Hub and pass a turn back with that Torrential Gearhulk available, as you mentioned a second ago. Ooh, Ulamog off the top. Is that good? Probably not. He's going to have up to 7 lands here on the battlefield. He's still pretty far away from being able to cast it, though it is within range. Yuuya knows he can just run it out there. There's nothing that Martin can have to interact here. And here comes that Glimmer of Genius from the graveyard. Yuuya perhaps tipping a little bit about what could be in his hand by waiting on the Torrential Gearhulk. He could have cast that and blocked the Rogue Refiner, but I think Yuuya correctly recognized that life total from one Rogue Refiner, not really a factor, and he'd rather leave up his reactive spells.
So let's take another peek at what Yuuya's working with now that he's drawn a bunch more cards and scryed a bunch here. Does have a Marvel now.
Uh-oh. That's business.
One thing that's pretty cool there, you can see only 3 lands tapped. Shrine of the Forsaken Gods, as long as you control 7 or more lands, it taps for 2 mana to play colorless spells, not just Eldrazi. So it can actually play artifacts like Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot, or in this case, Aetherworks Marvel, by adding 2 mana.
But wait, there's more. Another Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot. And these two are having a real energy fight here. Yuuya right behind Martin, 13 energy to 14. Neither of them has found a way to use it until this turn when Yuuya played his Aetherworks Marvel.
And you can see Yuuya is actually waiting to activate his Marvel. You can make a case on Yuuya's part for activating Marvel on his own main phase. If he finds an Ulamog, he can deny Martin some lands and thus some flexibility. But by leaving it up, it just gives Yuuya more options. You know, he could even, for example, hit a Censor off of his Aetherworks Marvel in response to Martin's spell, or hit a Negate for, as another example there. Looks like no need for that. Martin has no proactive plays there on his turn. And here comes Yuuya's first spin. Let's see what he gets. There's an Ulamog.
And there is an Ulamog for Yuuya Watanabe. This game has not gone well for Martin from the get-go, and this could be the nails in the coffin for game number 2. Yuuya certainly going to play the Ulamog, but he does have to decide what he wants to exile with it. He's going to cast it, but what is he going to target with the cast trigger?
I like just taking out lands here.
The Puzzle Knot's not really on your radar. The Rogue Refiner doesn't seem relevant.
Yeah, I mean, Martin
Land.
already has so much energy. I don't care about the Puzzle Knots. Again, the clock from Ulamog in terms of life total versus cards in library, very similar in this case, especially given all the life that Martin has gained. So just taking out lands restricts Martin's options, puts him, you know, impossibly far away from hard casting an Ulamog of his own. And there's nothing else you really care about on Martin's side of the battlefield.
There really isn't. He was going to shorten the clock a bit here by using Harness Lightning on the only real target he can see there. And remember, that was all Martin's end step. Yuuya still has all of his mana, all of his attacks available to him. And this one is looking very much like Yuuya Watanabe is going to be up 2-0 over Martin Müller here in our first semifinal. Yuuya could be a single game away from the finals if he can close this one out, and I don't see how he can't.
So again, similar to the first game, thinking from Martin's perspective, there's not much he can draw to interact with this Ulamog. You know, he doesn't have any main deck answers. He doesn't have any ways to exile it or bounce it or remove it from the battlefield in any way. His only option at this point is to race or to find an Ulamog of his own, which basically leaves him with 1 turn to top deck his own Aetherworks Marvel. Now, he does have 20 energy,
Yeah,
So he certainly can play and activate a Marvel right away. But
yeah. I did notice, by the way, Ian, that there were 2 Aetherworks Marvels exiled from that Ulamog. He gobbled those right up. Martin's going to barely stay alive here, going up to 17, but taking a massive hit. And I suppose he could draw Aetherworks Marvel.
he did.
He actually ripped it.
The one card he could possibly draw to give him a chance in this game.
Aetherworks Marvel off the top. Yuuya cannot counter it. He can destroy it, but not before it gets activated once. And now Martin needs to find himself an Ulamog. Now, he has one in his hand, and one also got exiled.
Okay, so there's
he
one
has
left in the
one
library, we
left,
think?
Yeah.
All right. Well, if he spins and hits Ulamog, that's going to be, his lifeline to get back into this game. We see Yuuya, in response, I think, activating his own Aetherworks Marvel, maybe looking for that one copy of Negate in his own library. Let's see if he can come up with it. A sensor. That's not going to do it.
Sensor, but
there's also, interestingly, another copy of Ulamog there. He might just go ahead and grab that to take out a couple of Martin's lands. But the problem there is he actually kind of wants to conserve the number of Ulamogs in his library, in total, right? So he may not decide to go with the Ulamog for that reason. Now, the other key thing here, Marshall, is that Yuuya has a copy of Ulamog in his own hand, and he's pretty close to casting it. I see 8 lands in the battlefield. 1 is a Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. So if he has a 9th land, he can actually cast Ulamog there. So what we might see happen, Yuuya goes for a Rogue Refiner, just getting a little bit of value. If Martin then can activate his own Aetherworks Marvel, find an Ulamog of his own, and take out Yuuya's Ulamog and Torrential Gearhulk, we may still see Yuuya fire back with a hard cast Ulamog from his own hand on the following turn. So it's going to be exciting. Let's see what we come up with.
He hit it!
There's
Ulamog was the last card off the top for Martin Müller.
Okay. Step 1. Actually, step 1 and step 2 kind of complete here.
Going to pass the turn back to Yuuya.
And Martin actually opting to take out Yuuya's Aetherworks Marvel instead of the Torrential Gearhulk.
Oh, man.
Now, we may see Dissenter's Deliverance at the end of the turn, first cracking a Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot.
Yeah, that was close. Yuuya played the Rogue Refiner hoping to hit that negate.
Right.
And he didn't draw it. He drew a land, but... Martin Müller. Top deck, and then the last card off with Ulamog.
Now, as exciting as all that was, not to be a Debbie Downer here, but we still think Yuuya is going to be able to cast an Ulamog of his own on the following turn, which would send things right back into his favor. We'll see how that all plays out. I won't get too far ahead of ourselves here.
Druid's Deliverance is going to get cycled by Yuuya Watanabe.
That's probably puzzling from Martin's perspective here. Like, hey, why isn't he killing my Aetherworks Marvel?
The reason is because he has another copy.
I see why.
Yeah.
Well, not only another copy of Druid's Deliverance, but another Ulamog. Yeah.
Oh, that's why, says Martin Müller. And there it is.
And yeah, you can see Martin actually just double checked that his other Ulamog was already in that exile pile there.
Yeah. And that is going to do it. Martin Müller, a valiant effort, almost caught back up thanks to a little good luck on his side. But unfortunately, the advantage that Yuuya Watanabe had gained had him way too far ahead. And he was able to simply cast an Ulamog from his hand. And that moves Yuuya Watanabe 2 games to the good here. And we're going to start moving into sideboarded games here. Mm-hmm. And, of course, that means that Yuuya just needs to pick up one of these. Let's take a look at Yuuya's sideboard. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, he's got 3 copies of Negate and a copy of Dispel to help fight counter wars there. Those are certainly going to come in here. The other option I really see is Tireless Tracker, just to help him kind of grind out a longer game there. It may be that post-sideboard, both players have a lot more ways to interact with each other, and so card flow, card quantity becomes a much more important aspect than the particulars of the card quality, whether or not you draw Aetherworks Marvel and what have you. We definitely saw that throughout the Swiss, that Yuuya in these mirror matches or semi-mirror matches would sometimes bring in Tireless Tracker and just grind his opponent out. I don't think we'll see any of these other cards here. You can make somewhat of a case for maybe bringing in one Radiant Flames or something like that, just in case it does turn into more of a mid-rangey grind fest or something. But I don't think that's a card he's going to want to have clogging up his draw steps here. So I like the Dispel, I like the 3 negates, and I like some number of Tireless Trackers, maybe even all 4.
Yeah, depending on which cards he really just doesn't want.
Right, it's more about what he doesn't want in his deck
Yeah.
than what he does here. I agree.
Okay, other side of the table, Martin Müller, what does he look at? He has, different looking sideboard. Look at that Sphinx of the Final
Yeah,
Word.
some more interesting and borderline options here. He's definitely going to bring in 3 negates for sure. We know that. Manglehorn I also like here. It can both come down after the fact to take out an Aetherworks Marvel or, Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot. And then also once Manglehorn is on the battlefield, it means that Yuuya's Aetherworks Marvels will enter the battlefield tapped, which then gives Martin a window to kind of deal with them before Yuuya gets a first spin. Now, similarly, Tireless Trackers, again, could come in some number, maybe even all 4. And then Sphinx of the Final Word is also kind of interesting here. I don't love it. I actually don't think Martin will bring it in, but it's not entirely unreasonable if, again, you expect the game to grind out a little bit more and turn into more of like a control versus control type matchup. The last card I want to mention is Confiscation Coup. Now, it's important to note this can actually steal artifacts as well as creatures. So there is some play here where you could steal an opposing Aetherworks Marvel and then be able to use it yourself. So those are options as well. So I definitely like the negates. I like the Manglehorns. I like some number of Tireless Trackers and Confiscation Coups. And then I think I don't like the Sphinx, but it's not entirely unreasonable to bring that in.
Okay. Both players certainly aware of the mirror match possibility with the Manglehorns, the negates, and we saw some even main deck cards from Yuuya Watanabe that have paid dividends for him, the Dissenter's Deliverance.
It's actually interesting, the combination of both Manglehorn and Confiscation Coup there. Confiscation Coup is really not that great on its own against Aetherworks Marvel because your opponent's always going to be able to play it and get an activation first, and that might be the game right there. So it kind of doesn't make sense to bring that card in that in the scenario where you want to use it, you may have already lost the game along the way, but Manglehorn changes that dynamic. If you can stick a Manglehorn, then your opponent will be forced to play an Aetherworks Marvel untapped and leave it vulnerable for a turn, in which case you could use Confiscation Coup. So without having playtested the matchup extensively, I don't know exactly how that dynamic is going to work out, so we may or may not see Martin go for that.
Players have finished adding and subtracting cards from their deck from sideboarding, and they are now getting ready to go for game number 3. We are pretty deep into the first semifinal match we've got for you today. We've got another one coming up after this. Ken Yukihiro from Japan playing against Jerry Thompson from the United States. That will be after this match has concluded, and that, of course, will leave us just with one final match to go here in Nashville, our finals.
Now, as players are getting ready here, it's also worth mentioning, in addition to how the decks change post-sideboard, we should still talk about what are the pre-sideboard advantages that still persist here. And again, for me, the big one for Yuuya is Glimmer of Genius. In many ways, in those first 2 games, Glimmer of Genius was the hero card that really set Yuuya up to take those long games, and he's still going to have a 4 Glimmer of Genius to 0 advantage in these post-sideboard games. Now, Tireless Trackers can mitigate that a little bit as additional form of card advantage for both players. But we'll see how that all plays out. And players here looking at their opening hands, taking a look through. Interesting. It looks like Yuuya did bring in a copy of Radiant Flames. We were kind of speculating on that. And that's probably just kind of a hedge in that, in case the matchup turns more into a grind fest type situation, having some more creature interaction to stabilize the board can be valuable.
Yeah, that can absolutely happen too. Take a look at Yuuya from Team Musashi. His teammate, by the way, Ken Yukihiro, who's playing a different deck. He's on Black-Green Energy. I mentioned just a minute ago, is going to be facing off against Jerry Thompson in our second semifinal, meaning that of the 4 players left, 2 of them play for Team Musashi. And guess what? They were in the lead coming in from the last Pro Tour on the team competition. So, whoa. We have found our front runner. No doubt about that. Okay, we are underway. That was a mulligan there from Martin Müller. Ugh. Not what Yuuya wanted to see off the top of the library there. He found an Ulamog. Martin averaging a clean 1 mulligan per game here thus far in the semifinals.
It's rough stuff in this kind of a matchup.
Yeah,
especially,
absolutely.
I think, post-sideboard, it's probably more impactful. Speaking of mulligans.
Stuff, another Ulamog off the top.
Yeah,
so
that's
Yuuya's first 2 draw steps have been Ulamogs.
At this stage in the game, that's kind of a virtual mulligan.
Right. Ooh, but Sensor is going to get put to good use here from Yuuya Watanabe. Martin Müller had ran out of Rogue Refiner, and he knew there was a possibility it would get censored, and it did.
Really nice play there for Yuuya. And we did see a tireless tracker in his hand earlier. He had the option to go for it, declines it.
Don't you just feel like you get away with something when you nab something with a sensor?
Yes, yes, you do. Especially later on in the game when it's just like, you know, you've been holding on to it for a while and your opponent's just like 4-drop, 3-drop, and you're just like censor your 3-drop, you know.
Oh, yeah. I did see somebody, maybe it was Yuuya, I don't know, hit sensor off of an Aetherworks Marvel to counter an Ulamog.
Yeah. Yep. We saw that throughout the Swiss. That's pretty cool.
Good. That's really getting away with something there. Okay, Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot for Müller is going to put him up to 5 energy, 23 life.
Taking a look at Yuya's hand here, we can see why he didn't play Tireless Tracker on the previous turn. He was actually leaving up another copy of Censor, importantly for Martin's turn 4. That's the key turn where an Aetherworks Marvel could come down uncontested if Yuuya were to tap out there. So now the question on Yuya's side is, does he leave up the Censor again, or does he decide that either Martin doesn't have a Marvel because he didn't try to play it that turn, or that Martin is correctly playing around Censor, whether he has a Marvel or not. And yeah, it looks like Yuuya just saying, well, it's kind of useless to hold up the Censor again. I'm just going to play this Tireless Tracker, then play my land, get a clue at least. Martin fires back with a Harness Lightning.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. I mean, Yuuya did draw an Aetherworks Marvel for that turn.
Oh, interesting. That would have been another option there as well.
Right.
I think Yuuya,
a little low on energy, though.
Yeah, low on energy, and it's dangerous in these post-sideboard games to just run out the Marvel when you don't have enough energy to activate it right away because, you know, he knows Martin has access to a card like Manglehorn, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Martin, again, with a very slow and anemic hand here. Just running out some Puzzle Knots, and I believe just with a lone Forest left in hand.
Once again, finds himself in a position where all he really wants to do is find an Aetherworks Marvel.
So Yuuya passing back. This looks like end of turn activation from Martin Müller. As Martin's untapping, we'll take a look at what's in Yuuya Watanabe's hand. He's got those 2 Ulamogs we noted earlier. Radiant Flame's not doing much. Censor could be relevant.
He's found a Whirler Virtuoso, which at least gives him a place to spend all of this energy. He could get a bit of a clock going here.
Yeah, actually, from Martin's standpoint, just spending all of his energy end of Yuuya's turn to just make a bunch of Thopters and just start beating down. Seems like maybe one of his best game plans at this point. Maybe he wants to leave himself with enough in case he top decks an Aetherworks Marvel. But
I'll tell you what, though. He's going to be real bummed when he sees the Radiant Flames from Watanabe, which he has in his hand, by the way. An interesting sideboard inclusion.
So it looks like Yuuya cycled Censor in response to the Whirler Virtuoso. You know, still allows it to happen. Martin goes up to 16 energy. That's a possible 5 Thopters, or say 3 Thopters plus saving 7 energy for Aetherworks Marvel. He's also got the Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot for even more energy. So lots of Thopters could happen here. But yeah, as you mentioned, Marshall, Yuuya did bring in that Radiant Flames as kind of a hedge there, we think, just to kind of prevent this exact type situation from running away with the game.
I think Yuuya was considering using a Harness Lightning there.
Yeah, there's a argument to using Harness Lightning at the end of Martin's turn, because that'll force Martin to commit whatever energy he wants to at that point.
The hard part is that Yuuya does not have an additional red mana source, and that would actually make it so his Ether Hub was turned off. I think that if Yuuya had a mountain instead of a forest or something, he may have gone for that play to kind of force the issue on Martin. But this still could work out for Yuuya anyway, because Martin could just be like, well, I'm all in. Here's a bunch of Thopters.
Right.
Get a nice big attack in, and then Yuuya could untap and just destroy his whole board.
So Yuuya's options here, I mean, he could fire off Radiant Flames just to make sure that the Whirler Virtuoso is gone. And Martin, of course, wouldn't be able to spend any energy to make any Thopter.
Right.
In response, those would die also. The problem is that leaves Martin with all the energy, which would put Yuuya vulnerable to another top-decked Whirler Virtuoso. So I don't love that as much, but it looks like he does go with it.
Yeah,
here.
he has the negate in hand still, and he knows that Martin is cardless. So even if the worst-case scenario of an Aetherworks Marvel were to get top-decked by Müller, he has a plan for it.
But I actually think the worst-case scenario is a top-decked Whirler Virtuoso at this point. Yuuya
interesting.
spent his only sweeper. If the same scenario happens again, now Yuuya doesn't have that flexibility.
Another Ulamog off the top for Yuuya. He just cannot keep those out of his
That's all
hands.
3 of his Ulamogs, right?
Yes.
So that turns Aetherworks Marvel into a much less powerful card here. Not a blank, of course. It still kind of digs through his library, but...
Yeah, we still got a really close game here.
Yeah. I mean, both players kind of struggling, but for very different reasons. Martin really without anything to do, and Yuuya actually just clogged up on Ulamogs and also energy starved to some degree.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, he's still working off of Ether Hub as his only red-producing land, so that's painful every time he wants to tap that. But I'm still, kind of on the edge of my seat here, Marshall, in the sense that another Whirler Virtuoso could really spell bad news for Yuuya.
Yeah, Yuuya's negate doesn't do anything. The Harness Lightning sure can take it out, but it will leave behind an army of threats that are quite difficult to deal with from Yuuya's perspective. And all he can do is attune with Ether.
Now, assuming, Yuuya can fade another Whirler Virtuoso, he is in pretty decent spot here as far as the rest of his hand for a long, drawn-out game. He has a negate ready for the first Aetherworks Marvel that Martin draws, so he's got that covered. He's got Harness Lightnings to take out any creatures, and meanwhile, he just wants to build up his mana and eventually get toward those Ulamogs, which his deck is fairly good at doing. He'd love to see a Glimmer of Genius sometime soon. That would really help him out. That Attune with Ether gave him that Mountain as a red mana source that's energy-free, so that's nice for him as well. And Martin only picking up a Servant of the Conduit here, just basically a Grizzly Bear at the time for the time being.
How about a Glimmer of Genius off the top there for Yuuya?
Exactly what Yuuya wanted. If he could have sculpted his draw for that turn, that's probably what he would have chosen.
He's going to go ahead and use Harness Lightning just to kill the Servant of the Conduit and then pass. That way he can keep up negate. And there's Glimmer of Genius on end step. Müller says, sure.
So I'm starting to like the way things look here for Yuuya Watanabe. He's getting ever closer to those Ulamogs in his hand. I actually think he just wants to draw and keep playing lands here.
Funny, yeah.
As long as he keeps shields up with negate.
All right, well, he's got an Aetherworks Marvel now and 7 energy, so he can help keep hitting land drops or getting cards in his hand. He's not going to be able to hit Ulamog, and that was an Aetherworks Marvel off the top for Martin. But as we've seen, Yuuya has refused to not have negate up for the duration.
So here comes
there's a
Manglehorn.
Okay, this is good.
And strangely, Yuuya actually doesn't care all that much about this because his Aetherworks Marvel is there mostly as just like a utility/card draw engine. I mean, it gives him some flexibility and some card selection, but it's mostly just like kind of tap draw a card or tap draw a decent card. At this point, it's not that powerhouse.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
He actually hit one of his
Speaking
better
of
cards.
decent cards, yeah.
Yeah, Torrential Gearhulk, which will enter the battlefield tapped, but can give him access to Glimmer of Genius, or if he wants, he can use Harness Lightning to take down the Manglehorn, though cards, he's going to get those instead.
So one interesting thing to clarify here is this in response to Manglehorn the spell or to the triggered ability of the Manglehorn? I'm guessing it's in response to the triggered ability.
It's the triggered ability.
Targeting the Marvel.
Yeah, that's why the Hulk's tapped.
Oh, I see, right, because it's actually entering tapped. Okay, yeah, totally makes sense. was going to say, otherwise, Martin would have the option to switch and actually kill the Torrential Gearhulk at this point.
Yeah,
which he probably wouldn't do, but from Yuuya's perspective, actually might even be stronger there. So Negate takes out Martin's Aetherworks Marvel, much to his chagrin, I'm sure.
He had to have known that that's what Yuuya was doing. I mean, Yuuya just refused to tap down any lower. Wow, he's even found his other copy of Radiant Flames, and he's got a ton of cards in hand, and now he's just marching his way up to start hard casting Ulamogs. And even though he's got 3 of them kind of clogging up his hand, well, he's going to be happy he does if he gets to just chain together 2 or 3 Ulamogs. That should certainly seal the deal if he gets to that point. He's got 8 lands right now on the battlefield, and he has a Shrine of the Forsaken Gods in hand, Ian.
Wow. So that means Ulamog next turn.
Next turn.
So this is a 1-turn window here. Now, Yuuya already used a negate. So potentially shields could be down here for him. But let's take a look at Yuuya's hand. Wow. He's actually sitting on 2 more copies of negate. So really,
Yuuya just has this, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think he's basically got it locked up. I mean, what can Martin draw here? Aetherworks Marvel is just going to get negated. Oh, 1 negate there. Sorry, we were just in the process of getting the hand updated there. But still, point stands. Yuuya's got him covered as far as top decking an Aetherworks Marvel here. And then beyond that, I guess Whirler Virtuoso still would be the next best draw you can get.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Yuuya, given the fact that he has negate in his hand, may just opt to not cast Ulamog. Because right now, Ulamog just takes out 2 lands, does not protect him from another Aetherworks Marvel hitting an opposing.
Oh, that's a really good point, Marshall. Yeah, he might just want to just stay here with the pressure he's got on board.
I mean, he is going to win the game just based on damage as well. And tapping out doesn't look particularly enticing. He finds another Aetherworks Marvel.
Now, aside from Martin top decking Aetherworks Marvel, which we know is not an out for him because of that negate in Yuuya's hand, the only other thing I could see him drawing into would be a Whirler Virtuoso. He does have 24 energy there, so possible to kind of set something up, but Yuuya has a copy of Radiant Flames in his own hand. So here we see this big attack. Lumbering Falls becomes animated, offers to trade with a Rogue Refiner, and this will drop Martin down to 7, I believe, giving him just 1 last draw step.
Sacrifice of a clue indicates that Yuuya, once again, uninterested in casting Ulamog from his hand. He is going to get the job done with the creatures he's got and the negate safely tucked away in his hand. He's going to play a Rogue Refiner post-combat as well as an Aetherworks Marvel. But we are seeing the last stages of our first semifinal here. Martin Müller overwhelmed by the card advantage from Yuuya Watanabe in each game. And that does it. Yuuya Watanabe is into the finals. 3-0. And a big smile from Yuuya because he is on to the finals.
An interesting thing here, Marshall, as much as there is a random element to the Aetherworks Marvel deck.
Is there? I hadn't really noticed.
Oh, well, trust me on this one. But anyway, as I was saying, as much as there's a random element to the Aetherworks Marvel decks, I do believe that every match we've seen so far here in the top 8 involving Marvel has been a 3-0 sweep one way or the other. Is that right?
Yep.
Just interesting to note.
Yeah.
Not sure what to make of it. Not
Maybe
really
the
making
deck's
a case
just
there, but
I have a running theory that that's a good deck.
yeah, but even in the mirror match, I'm saying, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So
Yeah, interesting stuff for sure. And it has really impressed me how Aetherworks Marvel has the ability to just, I won the game, I hit an Ulamog on turn 4, but also very much is not all in on that one activation. It is so common to be able to see them activate it once per turn, once it hits the battlefield. That happens all the time. I've seen people activate it 7 times in one game here in the at the tournament.
yeah, and interesting to see the backup plans that the players fall back on as well. I was really impressed with how Yuuya played that game almost as just a control player.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, that's going to do it for our first semifinal match. Of course, we've got one more to bring you before bringing you the finals here from Pro Tour Amonkhet. We'll be back with more after these messages.
Maria Bartholdi back at the news desk with Luis Scott Vargas, Yuuya Watanabe, 3-0 over Martin Müller. That is our first semifinals in the books. Semifinal number 2 coming up in a little bit, but let's first take a look at our bracket as we work our way through what has happened today. Luis, first quarterfinal, Chris Fennell versus Yuuya Watanabe. How did that break down?
Yuuya Watanabe swept Chris Fennell 3-0. Yuuya actually has yet to drop a game.
Wow.
He's 6-0 so far in games, 2-0 in matches, and he's ready for the finals.
Oh, he's got to be feeling good in that position. Next up, we had Christian Calcano on Mono Black Zombies versus Martin Müller. How did this one play out?
Well, Team Marvel still yet to lose a game in this bracket. Martin Müller advances over Christian Calcano 3-0.
Next up, we had Mark Tobiasz and Jerry Thompson. Jerry Thompson, of course, on Mono Black Zombies. Mark Tobiasz piloting Marvel as well in this instance. You were in the booth for this one.
I was, and we saw Jerry defeat an Ulamog in the concluding game. Despite the fact that Mark had a quick Marvel spin, Jerry was able to assemble a horde of zombies and advance past Mark.
Wow, that's impressive. Ken Yukihiro on Black Green Energy, of course. Eric Froelich was our other quarterfinals. Eric playing Aetherworks Marvel, a deck which he decided on pretty last minute, I believe. And Ken Yukihiro on Black Green Energy. Tell us how this one shook out.
Well, it all came down to a 6-6 Long Tusk Cub on turn 3 in game 3. Eric unfortunately did not pick up a game, and Ken Yukihiro advances past Eric Froelich.
Sometimes all you need is a 2-2 to get you there. All right, that's a look at our semifinals. And then, of course, Yuuya Watanabe, Martin Müller. We just saw that one happen. Luis, thoughts on that match?
It was a close match in terms of the deck composition, but I think the key differences of Yuuya having Glimmer of Genius and Torrential Gearhulk seemed like it paid dividends.
Yeah, it did. All right, let's take a look ahead. Jerry Thompson will be facing off against Ken Yukihiro coming up in our second semifinal. There you see Jerry Thompson on your screen right now, a member of Team Mutiny, 32 years old, lifetime earnings $73,000. This is his second Pro Tour Top 8, 11 GP Top 8s. He's a Gold Pro, first at Grand Prix Nashville in 2010, first at Grand Prix Denver in 2008. And here we go, Mono Black Zombies. Luis, how does this deck get the job done?
It casts ideally a 1-drop on turn 1, a 2-drop on turn 2, and a Lord of the Accursed on turn 3. It really is just trying to stack up a bunch of zombies with 4 copies of Metallic Mimic, 4 copies of Lord of the Accursed, and 3 copies of Liliana's Mastery. Jerry has a lot of ways to give his zombies either +1/+1 or a +1/+1 counter.
I'm interested in how the additions of, Dread Wanderer and Liliana's Mastery really help this deck come to life for this tournament.
Dread Wanderer is key because it's a 1-mana zombie that actually has a very powerful ability. We saw Jerry defeat Mark Tobiasz by getting Dread Wanderer back from the graveyard after he had discarded it earlier to Crypt Breaker, a nice little bit of synergy. And then Liliana's Mastery, well, it gives all your zombies +1/+1, great in a deck full of zombies. It also gives you 2 zombies. It's kind of an army in a can with 6 power and 6 toughness by itself, stacking very nicely with all your other lords, cards that pump your zombies. And as a result, we have a deck that's fast. Dread Wanderer into Relentless Dead into Lord of the Accursed is a fast clock, but also resilient. We saw Jerry defeat an Ulamog. You can defeat a Sweeper. You've got cards that come back from the graveyard. You have cards like Liliana's Mastery, which are just great top decks.
How do you feel about this matchup versus Black Green Energy?
I like Jerry's side of things. Both decks have a bunch of creatures on the ground, but Jerry's able to stack up many more. Dark Salvation looking incredibly key here, as it's frequently going to make 1 or 2 zombies and kill one of Ken Yukihiro's creatures. Or, like we saw in the last match, Jerry can cast it for 1 mana, getting no zombies, but still giving -X/-X, equal number of zombies he controls.
Exactly. Thanks, Luis. Well, we've got Brian David Marshall over at our video wall with a very special guest. David Williams is here.
Thanks, Maria. I'm here with David Williams. David, you worked with the Team Mutiny guys for this Pro Tour. You guys, how did you guys arrive at this Mono Black Zombies deck?
It was interesting. We spent a lot of the time testing after the bans were announced, just trying different brews, but also working with familiar strategies we already knew. And zombies wasn't ever really mentioned. And then it started popping up in the 5.0 list from the Magic Online dailies. And I think a lot of us at first kind of talked about it, but no one really tried it. We sort of dismissed it. And then when we got here Monday in the house and we were playing our matches, I can't recall who it was. One person, I think it might have been Brandon Nelson, said, hey, let's just try this deck and put it together, and just started smoking everyone. And it was just so resilient and so powerful, even though it looks like it could be a deck that people were playing maybe because the cards were cheap or it's just a little creature deck. We were kind of dismissing it, I think. And then once we saw how powerful it was, it was almost like what really happens with zombies. Like one guy started doing it, and then the next thing you know, there's a large group of us believing in this deck, and we're trying to order 30 copies of Relentless Dead. So it really did kind of infect our group, and eventually most of us realized how good the deck was, and we were on it. I played it myself and had good success.
I appreciate that you guys also took the time to get the right zombie tokens for your deck.
That's all me, I'm going to say. We were ordering the cards, and I threw that on the order, and everybody's like, what is that? And I'm like, we got to win in style if we're going to make zombies. Most people didn't want to spend the money on them, but Jerry was like, I got to get some too. So me and Jerry had them, and it worked out for Jerry.
Now, we're going to watch Jerry play here against a green-black deck. What are we looking for from Jerry? What's going to tell us that Jerry's doing well in this matchup? What's something people at home following along can look for?
Yeah, I mean, Jerry just wants a consistent curve with creatures, which is what you want with this deck. But he needs to have removal for the Heart of Kirin, because Heart of Kirin is huge. Luckily, Fatal Push can do it, and Grasp of Darkness. So if he has either of those and he's able to take care of a Heart of Kirin, it doesn't allow Ken to put a lot of pressure on him back. He's going to be on the back foot. So besides that and some shenanigans with the Winding Constrictor and Walking Ballista, if he doesn't have either of those two things going, which removal can break up, it looks very good for Jerry.
Okay, and that's my other question is what do you see from Ken Yukihiro's side that means Jerry's in trouble?
Yeah, though he needs kind of sort of combo draws with the Winding Constrictor to really power out. I mean, he doesn't have the Green Gear Hulk, which is a big relief for Jerry. So without that, it's really just Winding Constrictor comboing with the Walking Ballista or Heart of Kirin. So if he can answer those, I think it's good for Jerry.
Now, I mean, it's one of the things I've noticed people playing this deck is they're really able to vary their speed that they play the deck at. You talked about the resiliency of it, the Crypt Breaker, and the ability to draw cards. What do you think is more likely the mode that we'll see Jerry playing this in? Is he just going to be jamming and making guys, or is he going to be like sitting back a little?
I think it really depends on how Ken's draw is playing out. If it looks like it's susceptible to a lot of pressure, then I think he's going to apply it. But if you need that removal, or it looks like he's building up a good defense, then you can just go into kind of mid-range mode, drawing cards with the Crypt Breaker, making some zombies, trying to find things like Liliana's Mastery and removal to really overwhelm the board and then make that big attack.
Okay, well, I think that's part of the appeal of the deck there. Thank you so much, David Williams, for giving us a little bit of insight into what we might see in this semifinal match.
Great stuff. Thanks very much to Dave Williams and Brian David Marshall over there. Now, I've been joined by Ian Duke. Ian, we're closing in on our second semi-final. We know that Jerry Thompson is there. You've already seen his mono black zombies list. But this is the deck that I kind of think's really kind of cool. It's Ken Yukihiro, who's one of my favorite Japanese Magic players, always plays with a smile on his face, super passionate, takes winning very lightheartedly, takes losing super seriously, but in the best possible way. And it's great to see him one match away from the final. Why don't we take a look at his career profile? You see that face he's got there? That's just him. He's a terrific guy. Closing in on 250 lifetime pro points. His third Pro Tour top 8 here. Champion of Grand Prix Singapore in 2013. But it's his list that's interesting, because we've got a sea of Marvel, 4 Marvel decks in the top 8, 3 zombies in 2 different flavors. This is the outlier, if you like, but in a sense it's also a throwback, Ian. So tell us what this black-green energy is trying to do.
So this is kind of like a get on the board quickly, get huge creatures quickly type deck, really dominating the ground. Winding Constrictor being a key card here, enhancing the power of all of your creatures that use +1/+1 counters, like Long Tusk Cub, like Walking Ballista, like Rishkar, Pima Renegade. We do see a new addition here from Amonkhet to this traditional version of this archetype, which is Bone Picker.
Right, which it's listed as 3 and a black, but it sort of isn't.
Yeah, as long as a creature has died this turn, you can cast this for 1 black mana, and it's a 3/2 flying Death Toucher, so it doesn't take a lot to realize that's a pretty good deal.
It really is. It's a great deal. And talking of outstanding value, Team Musashi are 1 match win away. If Yukihiro wins this, 2 Musashi team members will face each other in the final. Ian, you know how hard it is just to make a single top 8. To put 2 of 6 into the final, incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime that can happen, you know your team has done awesome work in preparing for the tournament and awesome work supporting each other in all of everything that goes into getting to the end of a Pro Tour. I mean, emotional support, moral support, patting each other on the back, it all counts, right?
Yeah, well, that's the Musashi plan, but there's a mutiny on the cards. Jerry Thompson is standing in the way. We're going to send you down for semi-final 2 of Pro Tour Amonkhet.